to Breaking the Grade.
Lisa Friedlander is that family member, friend, colleague, and mentor that we really all want in our lives. She is strong, smart, and super driven. And that has been evident throughout her personal and professional life. But sharing all of these essential qualities with other people has come at a cost at times for Lisa because she's not always been able to put herself first. By listening to our show today about Lisa, you will learn about the following: how her daughter was born at 1.5 pounds, the struggle her family endured, and how she turned that crisis into an opportunity at Children's Hospital in Washington, D.C. Why she decided to become an entrepreneur and start a company with her good friend, and the many lessons she learned from that adventure. And hear what Lisa is up to today at her exciting job at Next, where she is able to be a friend, a mentor, a legal advisor, and an ass kicker to startups looking for sound legal advice. Breakers, band together and be prepared to make a friend as we listen to Lisa's Bruises and Brilliance. Lisa and John, join me.
Oh, I'm so excited for this one. Hey, Lisa, how are you?
I am great. What a way to spend a Tuesday, right? A Tuesday. Really honored to be here, guys, and so excited to speak with you.
Yeah, totally. Before we get into it, we've probably got two things we should cover. First, John, you tell us who you are, and then second, John, we've got to be honest with the audience of who Lisa is to us. So why don't you start about who you are?
Definitely. I'm John Gamba, entrepreneur in residence and director of innovative programs at Penn's Graduate School of Education, where I oversee entrepreneurial programming with a vision and mission to advance impact, efficacy, and equity in worldwide education. Penn grad, something in common with you, Lisa. And right. This connection and this segment is going to be awesome because Lisa actually brought Josh and I together. So that's a story in and of itself. There are so many cosmic connections here, Lisa, in terms of your background, both personally and professionally. And I'm just excited to just jump right into it.
Yeah, Lisa is a pandemic matchmaker. Because it was October of the pandemic.
To be responsible for this dynamic duo. I mean, really, it doesn't get any better than this.
That sounds like a podcast in and of itself.
Pandemic matchmaking. Yeah, you did it, Lisa. And so we're gonna tell your story here. And as you know, John and I are glass half full, if not more, type of guys. But we're going to start off because in this show we talk about the bumps and the bruises that lead to brilliance. And one of the first bumps that you talked about in our pre-interview was breaking off your engagement in college. So we're kind of going to skip over, the growing up part and the real learning that started in college and talk about the engagement that broke off.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing. I don't think I've ever really spoken about it per se. It's certainly not in this setting. I know lots of people go through things that have happened. For when you ask the question in terms of, something that was transformational personally, it was interesting. One of the first things that popped into my head, I had the great fortune of being in a relationship with a guy, that I loved in college, mostly all through college at UPenn, really brought a lot to my life. And as when I was a senior there, he decided to pop the question, so to speak. We'd never really talked about it before. And, of course I loved him. And so, okay, let's do it. But as graduation approached, I really started to feel like my life was on this runaway train. And of course, I'm uber young at 20 or 21. And so never navigated anything like this before. Our families were close friends. So of course, everybody was thrilled and over the moon. And, it was just little old me, at school by myself, just kind of internally, so divided and so unsure and unclear that this was the path that I wanted my life to take. And ultimately, as graduation approached, I just really started to realize that this was just too fast and not for me. And I didn't want to have my whole life, felt like I would have my whole life kind of wrapped up in a bow, and just giving up a lot of ownership and control over the direction that my life was going to take. So with great pain, made that decision, hurting somebody that I love deeply, including both of our families, disappointing a lot of people, which is not something I'm very good at. It was really, really challenging, but I survived. We all survived. We moved forward. We're super good friends now and see each other regularly. So yeah, I mean, it was a huge bump for me. Really helped me listen to my inner voice and garner courage to do the things that I needed to do, even if that meant disappointing people that I loved. And that was, still to this day, somewhat of a challenge, but it was sort of the first time that I think I exerted real maturity, independence in putting myself first.
I think a lot about these, you used the term inner voice. Was this a heart or a head decision, or was it a combination of both? Like, take us quickly through that process.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely both. I think they were both aligned in the direction that I wanted to take and in the fear of really hurting people that I loved. And I think at the end of the day, for me, I'm always more head than heart. If I had to choose one or the other, very logical, very well thought out and planned and all that kind of stuff. But this was really, they were both aligned. And it was really just more a sense of feeling that I was making the choices for me at that stage in life. And I was letting external forces, not even necessarily someone else, but external forces sort of pressure me into going into a direction that I wasn't ready for.
Now you're dealing with that. You're dealing with that decision, and then Josh, you kind of go through the other big moments in your life. I'll bet back then you were like, "Man, it's not going to get any worse than this." When you're trying to make it, and then all of a sudden, Josh, you can kind of tee up the other crazy circumstances and things that happened on your journey, Lisa. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, my husband always says it's like the great equalizer. Like, nobody escapes shit, if I'm to say that. It comes for everybody at some point. And I've been extremely blessed that the shit that's come my way, been dealable, and I've had great resources and an amazing family and friends and support system. But yeah, I mean, everybody gets it. I think it's really just how you, right? As everybody says, it's like how you deal with it. What do? Do you fall apart? You stand up? What you're saying, what Josh started off talking with my daughter, she was my first, so never been a mom before, never been a parent before. And she was born severely premature. If you guys, I'm going to age myself here, but if you remember those Beanie Babies, or people in the audience, remember those little beanies, she was so tiny, and had a lot of complications thereafter. But you're a parent, so what do you do? You're not going to fall apart. You're going to do what you have to do, take the journey, find the best resources, the best doctors, the best nurses. And I mean, how blessed am I that Children's National Hospital, one of the best in the country, top 5 NICU for years and years and years, was right in the backyard. So
yeah. So one of my favorite books, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, and an amazing moment, right? When you have those seminal moments in your life and in your career. I haven't shared this with Josh, I don't think, but when my son was 4 months old, I was in LA. My wife had a complicated pregnancy. And JJ, my 24-year-old son now, came down, and I got a call with RSV, which we're dealing with now in society. Yeah. And I was like, "Oh, RSV, I had never heard of it. Maybe some Tamiflu. Get some." No, and she said, "We're going to keep an eye on him." An hour later, I got a call, said, "Get on the next flight home."
Wow.
And I got on the next flight home and I walked into the hospital and there was the tent. And I was watching my 4-month-old JJ struggle with RSV, gasping for breath. And it was the hardest, most. And there's a story behind this, because it was at that moment, and I don't believe in coincidences, that a nurse walked in. And my best friend in college, Lara, who was a nursing student, said, "I know Lara. I got him. He's going to be okay."
Wow.
So it was in Georgetown, at the Georgetown Hospital. And she sat me down, and for days we watched him kind of gasping, and he made it through. Obviously, he's very healthy, but it's really those moments where you really have to think through what your priorities are, and suddenly your faith is challenged, and you go through it. And I'm wondering if that kind of informed some of your career and professional trajectory in terms of making decisions on what was important to you, whether it was your legal career or getting into entrepreneurship and ultimately what you're doing today.
Yeah. Well, you know what? To this day, I really, if I had to go back and do it all over again, I would be a doctor or a nurse. Like I just have so much admiration and respect. And that's even without COVID. You throw COVID in, and what these healthcare providers have gone through and continue to go through, and just witnessing it firsthand. These people are, at least the people at Children's National, and I gotta believe it's everywhere when you go into this as a field, are truly extraordinary. I mean, going above and beyond is like not even, doing it justice. It's like they're not even just caring for your child, they're caring about you. I always say that we really felt that difference. And for us too, as parents, I mean, it was really extraordinary. But it did alter. Working at a law firm at the time, went to law school, practiced corporate law for many, many years. I did sort of that. I did take a step back from the professional full-time job. I did end up going back. And that's where I really developed, I think, this passion for business and understanding that just as a practicing attorney, I was really not utilizing, I think, all the skills and what I felt were sort of internal talents, practicing law in a law firm. So it did interrupt that process. And, look, there's many silver linings always. And that was certainly one of them, of having me sort of take a step out and coming back in, things were looking very different.
And Lisa, there's lots of different, well, I've known John now for 2 years, basically. I think it's about 2 years, maybe 3 years. I don't know. It feels like 15, but I used a line here on purpose. Because John always says you never let a crisis go to waste. And so I used a line here in the introduction: we turned a crisis into an opportunity. I didn't want to use the exact words, I knew we'd get here, but talk about what you've done at Children's Hospital, because it's really impressive. And I think it just shows end to end how you can take a crisis and, and not let it go to waste.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, as I said, like I was just completely blown away by not just the level of care, which is extraordinary, and that's kind of a given with the place like Children's National, but it was more the passion and energy and commitment of these individuals. And, and John, I'm sure you felt this way too, when your son recovered, like, how do you give back to the people that literally saved a child's life and potentially over and over and over again? Gave he or she the quality of life that, they've gone on to have. There's just no way to really express that gratitude. So I started a fundraiser, and it was an annual fundraiser. We called it Heart Songs, because while my daughter was in the NICU, this young man used to panic. This extraordinary young man who suffered from a rare form of muscular dystrophy was in the PICU. And we met, and he wrote several books of poetry called Heart Songs. He was on the Oprah Winfrey Show. He met with Jimmy Carter. He was this angel on earth with such wisdom for, an 11-year-old boy who was really ill. anyway, we took the name of songs in his honor and now memory. And I just set out to do an annual fundraiser that gives back to the hospital, raise money, raise awareness, wanted to make sure that the doctors and nurses there were supported. And then ultimately it morphed into supporting the housing program. One of Jacqueline's most difficult and complicated surgeries required us to travel to New York and I was blessed to be able to stay in a Ronald McDonald House there, really understanding that when your child is at the hospital for long term, or it's for long-term treatment or surgeries, and you're from out of town, what do you do? Where do you stay? Those bills, they add up so fast. So we were so blessed to have the opportunity to stay in a Ronald McDonald House. So we pivoted our fundraising towards supporting the family house program at Children's. So now there are about 500, 400 families that are supported with free services, everything from housing, meals, to transportation, to clothing, whatever they need. Heart Songs is the sole provider of funds for this program. So I'm really proud that without it, finally, I'll just say we're retired the annual Heart Songs event, and we have introduced a new program, which I am really excited about, called Teens with Heart Songs. And we're supporting the same thing, the family housing program at National, but the Teens with Heart Songs program is a way to get high school students involved in community leadership and philanthropy. So we have this whole 8-10-week program to give 9th through 12th grade students the opportunity to get involved in their community, raise money for a great cause, and provide sort of a platform to exhibit and learn leadership skills. So we're in our third year. We're wrapping it up Wednesday night. I think we're close to raising $100,000 this year. Yeah. And in total, both Heart Songs have raised well over $2 million, and regardless of the money, have just supported tons of families and doctors and nurses. So it has been a deep, deep passion of mine. It started out as a way of giving back, something that I could do for something else or somebody else. But many years ago, it completely transformed to I get way more out of it than what's given out. So
you're a starter. You're a starter. So before we move into what you do on a day-to-day basis, let's talk about one of your other babies, one of your other startups, which is the business that you started. Yeah, and that's how we met. So talk about that a little bit, if you can.
Yeah, really. So, going back to sort of my realization that I wanted to do something else. I was really excited about business when I was general counsel at a company, and a good friend of mine was sort of feeling the same in terms of not loving what we were doing. So we decided to go together, and neither one of us had any business background. We didn't have any technology background, but we got good advice, which is to focus on pain points in our lives that could be, solved better. You have technology, and we were both young moms. We were moms with young kids, 5 young kids between us. And it was in that world, in that time frame, where we were deep in the after school activity space before Josh came along and transformed the whole industry, allowing us to leave our kids at school and call it a day. But yeah, so you're booking music, art, and gymnastics, and you have nowhere to find. I mean, this was back, Expedia was just starting to become ubiquitous, still they were Googling, but there really wasn't much of anything. So our epiphany was one morning, my co-founder had just whole trip on Expedia, and I spent, 2 hours trying to find a gymnastics class on Tuesday afternoon at 3:00. And, that was it. So we launched this company, Activity Rocket. It was like an Expedia for after school activities and camps. Went through the whole entrepreneurial journey from ideation to MVP, friends and family, angel round, launching in the DC metro area, scaling beyond, getting a lot of things wrong, learning a lot of lessons, trying to fail fast and iterate didn't always work out. Learned a ton of people, that would sit down with us and educate us and give us good advice. Our two angel investors were critical. Ultimately, 5 years later, to a California ed tech company that was focused on personalized for kids. So that kind of is what Activity Rocket, I wouldn't necessarily say was ed tech, but this definitely moved me into that ed tech space. They acquired us in 2017, and we worked with them for almost a year in 2018, both on the sort of merger of the two tech products, and then we started selling for them to open up the East Coast market for their offering. So that was really my first foray into the whole ed tech scene.
So the connection here is, first of all, you introduced Josh and we've had a lot of conversations around this area of mentorship and venture development and some of the things you do now with Next. But I never knew how really cosmically connected we were, Lisa. One, my struggle with my son and almost losing him, I didn't know that connection. Two is, in terms of the law, I was pre-law. I worked at the public defender's office in Washington, D.C. before I thought I was going to go to law school. You may not have known that about me, thinking I was going to be a pro bono litigating lawyer, and then woke up to this incredible world of business and eventually entrepreneurship. And I, too, had to fail fast, fail smart, go through a lot of iterations. And there were a lot of amazing, incredible lessons learned from the lived experience in my personal life that I can do this. I can make it through this. I have a why. I have a North Star. I know I can fail fast, but fail smart, and surround myself with people who are smarter than me. Sounds like you did that. Now, fast forward all the way to what you're doing now, Josh, if I can sort of...
John's mind is exploding in front of us right now.
Setting that up. Do you find yourself in the work that you're doing now, and again, you're going to describe that with Next, drawing on those experiences from your personal life all the way back to college with the decision that you had to make to raising your child, to then going through not knowing what you were doing as an entrepreneur, making the pivot away from practicing law to now what you're doing with Next, sharing those stories and inspirations with the clients that you're working with now?
Yeah. No, I feel if you're really lucky in life, then the experiences that, I think it happens to everyone. You just may not always recognize your experiences build on one another, right? And you might have individual paths that all seem disparate, but somehow they end up kind of all, morphing into one. And, when I heard about Next, it was just sort of being announced, and it was this different model of delivering legal services to startups, which we can go into. But for me, it was like I was a provider of services for 20 years, like sitting on that
side of the table, right?
And then all of a sudden, I did a lot for Activity Rocket that I could on the legal. A lot of it, we couldn't. So then I became a consumer of legal services. And oh boy, it's a very different vantage point. And we participated in, a startup legal program, and, we got a lot out of it. But in terms of the actual delivery of legal services, not at all. So it really helped me in both sense of understanding what our clients are going through in terms of not just the legal, but I launched and grew and sold a company. I am a co-founder of an angel investment group. So I have sort of been every seat at that table. So I feel like I am very uniquely positioned to talk to startups about these issues from all of my previous backgrounds. And, at the end of the day, it's just about de-risking, right? How are the millions of different ways de-risk your startup? One very important one is legal. It's not the only one. Mentoring and advising, and what, John, you provide with Catalyst, and this podcast itself. Everything is is assisting in de-risking your company in one way or another. I very much feel my journey was sort of kind of meant to be, if you will, where I am today.
It's pretty amazing. Josh often asks questions like, how do you institutionalize advising your mentees? You talked
I
about
often ask John these questions. Just to clarify.
What are the frameworks for providing guidance and mentorship? And is there a roadmap or a playbook? And I often tell Josh, and it sounds like that's what you just said, Lisa, that I share anecdotes. I often say, well, I didn't ultimately just run out of money, but I can certainly relate to having 2 payrolls left and not knowing what to do. And let me share some of the stories as to what I did. Or I didn't have a CTO, so I had to go out and this is what I did to research to bring a technical director in who could provide. So it's very much story-based. There's no silver bullet to what I do and what it sounds like you do, but it is drawing on a lot of experiences, sharing some of the anecdotes, being on both sides of the table, whether it's on one side of the investor table or the other side of the investor table, one side of the legal table, the other side of the legal table. So I'm relating to that very much as well.
Since you've been on both sides, Lisa, let's give in the last, we're getting close to landing this thing here. But let's give some like super practical advice that you wrote down here, which I think is really good. And I'm just going to read it straight and then you can expand on it. Legal fees should be predictable, reasonable, and sustainable. The provision of legal services, nice word there, provision. You can explain that. Provision of legal services should be client-centric, not attorney-centric. So can you give our audience like some real solid advice if they have their startup and, they've been using their Uncle Paul as their lawyer. You might even know my Uncle Paul, Lisa, right? When you go from Uncle Paul, who we all love, to paying for services. So what's some tangible advice for them?
We all know resources are extremely tight at the beginning, right? We get that. I know that. I can speak to that. So I understand somebody coming and saying, well, I can't afford anybody but my Uncle John, or I can't afford anything but LegalZoom. And you know what? You got to do what you got to do. So for a certain period of time, if that's all you can do, great. Then do that. But at a certain point, you do have to realize and recognize the importance of having sort of what I'll call not a DIY approach, not a do-it-yourself kind of approach to legal. And I do really believe in my heart of hearts that having an attorney that is focused, that understands startups is a huge difference from, just a general practitioner. There are so many nuances of launching and growing a startup that unless you've lived it, you just don't know. So I like to say we're by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. Predictable fees. We operate in fixed fee packages whenever we can. That's critical. My experience with our startup friendly law firm is, we asked one question about paying interns. We got a very simple response, and we got an $1,100 bill. Well, that was full marketing budget for the month, so really? So what happens then? Then you're afraid to ask the questions. Then you don't ask the questions, do the work. You don't engage. So we really have established Next as a partner in growth to de-risk the company so that operating in these fixed fee environments with these packages enables our clients to call regularly and not have to worry about picking up the phone and asking that 5th, 10th, or 20th question because it's all included in the package. The delivery of legal services on the billable hour has not changed ever. There are a lot of firms out there that may provide a package or two or fixed fee here and there, but we live, eat, and breathe this area. And if we don't have a package, our gut is to try to create one. And even if not, just put as many guardrails around predictable, sustainable, and reasonable legal fees that companies can access as they're growing all the way through, and just know that your T's are crossed when you're going to raise money. That's critical. When we were acquired, we were in better shape than the company who acquired us, and they were a lot bigger with a lot more resources. And that's because we paid attention to this stuff. Investors look at this stuff. So we want to be client centric. We want to be startup centric. And we recognize that these are some core pillars that really can be transformative and innovative, at least in the legal field.
Yeah, and we've referred some prospects and clients to Next, and the feedback is always tremendous. And they often ask, "What can I expect from Lisa, and what can I expect from Next before I make a decision?" And I say three things. One is Lisa has a way of demystifying this process, demystifying what legal services are, demystifying what next generation legal services should be. Two is she's going to be inquiry based. She's going to ask a lot of questions without charging you, because she doesn't have all the answers, and she wants to know a lot more about you before providing any services back to you and your firm. And three is she just really cares. And I think that empathy, Lisa, comes from your lived experiences during your life and what you've gone through. And when the prospects come back to me, they say, "That's exactly what I got. Straight shooter. What you see is what you get." Demystified the process, asked a lot of questions to learn more about the business, and then really was empathic and really cared about the product and services that were being put forth. So I hear that a lot with the prospects and the clients that have been put forth. Not that that's an advertisement, but that really comes from the heart.
Thank you. I really
unless
appreciate
they want to pay for it, John. Unless they want to pay for advertising. But
when people are deeply passionate, right? You guys are both deeply passionate about what you do. And I feel like when people are that, it comes, you can't not have it translate in multiple ways. And I feel like we're all really lucky that way. And we're doing something that, we're deeply passionate about, and meeting people who are deeply passionate about what they're doing. And in many ways, trying to change the world and, make it a better place. So what a gift that is.
Yeah, you use the word luck. John used the word cosmic. I'll kind of explain here as we get to the end here regarding breaking off engagements. Anybody who knows me well knows there's a story out there in the DC area about that. Our daughter was born at 4 pounds 4 ounces. We were in the NICU at GW, and Lisa and I could probably do some Jewish geography that would take us back 100 years in the DC area, basically through my uncle Robert Isaacson, and now we've talked about my uncles Robert and Paul, and it gives me this conversation, gives me a deeper appreciation for the lawyer I've had. I've had the same lawyer and accountant since 2008, Brent Ahalt. He's in Greenbelt, Maryland, and Harry Harrison, who's at Aronson, and everybody knows Harry and Susan. And Harry served on the board at B'nai Israel with my dad. So I will stop all of this Jewish geography and take it back to, it's all about relationships.
Yeah.
It's all about relationships. And this is the last show we're doing of this year. And John and I built a lot of relationships. This is a really good one to kind of end on for the year, because Lisa brought us together, and we have certainly taken the ball and run with it in many different directions. And we will do that going into next year as well. And Lisa, just, this is our thank you to you for bringing us together. And this is our thank you to you for, all you do for the startups that you do, and particularly our interest in the education space.
And Lisa, bringing it back to the great Viktor Frankl, one of my favorite quotes, I think, was, "He who knows the why for his existence will be able to bear almost any how." And I think that you set for yourself very early on a why. And we talk a lot about the why, Simon Sinek and the why. What is your why? Can bear with any how, getting through a premature baby being born, getting through RSV, getting through crushed relationships and a crushed heart. And that's why we do what we do. And we care so much about education, why we care about the legal field and representing the interests of our clients, and advancing equity, impact, and innovation in the fields and sectors we serve. So from my bottom of my heart, thank you for introducing me to the great Josh Chernikoff, and for doing the incredible work that you do with the clients that you do.
Oh, and right back to the both of you. really from that you be brothers in so many ways, and what you're doing and contributing to the community is just remarkable. I'm so honored to know both of you. So thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Brothers and sisters from another mother.
Yeah. And if
There we
we
go.
all were together, like real brothers, John and I would pop a cold one and enjoy a beer. This has been enjoyable.
Yeah, well, next time I want my margarita delivered to,
Why deliver it when you can just have it underneath the sun here in
There you go.
Mexico?
How about that?
That's
There you
right.
go.
We're coming to
So-
Mexico.
Bring it. It's
Exactly.
been a wonderful year. This has been a wonderful show. And so we'll see everybody next year.
Thank you,
guys.
Lisa.
Happy and healthy.
You know.
Thanks for listening, Breakers.